Hey everyone, this is the Mind Workshop podcast. I'm your host, Victor Dwyer, and today we're going to be talking about the value of relationships and why they're so important. Today we have Allison on, and we're just going to really go through it, and I'm really excited to have her on. Allison, please tell us a bit about yourself and how you got started into all of this.
Sure. I became a life coach about 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then moved into relationship coaching, um, as a more succinct place to be.
Yeah,
And absolutely love it because we really live to be with other people,
yeah,
and connect with other people. And it's sometimes difficult.
yeah,
And so, trying to navigate the way of
yeah.
people, communicating and understanding each other and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
living
What do you think
together.
is
And
Yeah, sorry. What do you think the number one thing is that when people come to you, when it comes down to relationships? Is it communicate? I assume that it's communication. What's the
it's,
biggest thing that you see?
it's communication.
Yeah,
It is.
it is. And what do you usually recommend to like help increase that communication with the both people? I'd love to hear that.
Well, there are different, it depends on, it depends on the two people involved in dialogue.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people will speak over each other and or one another, and
Hmm.
learning to stop and listen. So the first thing is to learn how to listen.
Hmm. Yeah.
And listening is an interesting thing because we think we know how to listen.
Yeah.
But if somebody's talking,
Hmm.
and I'm sure it's different for what you're doing right now, but if somebody is speaking and you're already thinking of the next thing to say, you're not really listening.
Yeah.
It's not coming in.
And what would you recommend to stop someone from thinking that like stop someone from thinking what they're going to say, because I think it like comes down to people fear that like that pause of like, oh crap, what am I going to say next, and people like have that preemptive like mindset saying, oh, I got to think of what I'm going to say so that that pause isn't there. What do you recommend to so that someone says that they're like in the moment and just listening to someone to really increase their listening skills?
Well, it takes practice, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
one thing. And if I'm coaching someone, there's role play that might be involved so that they get that practice in. And just having them become mindful of what they are doing, and that
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with a slight pause.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the you know, there, a little bit of dead air time is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're not gonna die. Yeah.
No, no. Um,
That's good. And what are some other key important pieces of a relationship that you would find valuable to the audience that you think a lot of people are doing wrong when it comes to their relationship, and how are you providing that advice to kind of overcome that?
it can be difficult for people to express their needs,
Yeah.
and they expect the other person, and this isn't any relationship, they
Mm-hmm.
think the other person can mind read
Yeah.
and know what you're thinking and what your needs might be,
Mm-hmm.
rather than stating what the need is.
Yeah.
clearly, um, and succinctly.
And I think that's so important. Like even in every aspect of life, like the importance of like almost dumbing yourself down and saying, "Hey, I know nothing right now," and not assuming that anyone knows anything about you, because
Mhm.
that will make you a more effective communicator by not assuming that anyone knows anything about you. So that way, when you explain something that it honestly makes sense because it's like you're explaining it to a baby or someone that knows nothing about you, and it just makes you a more effective communicator overall, um, by never assuming. And I love to hear from you. What are some tips that you have to make it where that person doesn't assume, that you kind of dumb down your communication in a way to make it where, hey, this person knows nothing about me. Now let's communicate. Do you have any strategies when it comes down to that?
I think it's asking the so if you're unsure, you want clarity, um, and if somebody says something
Mm-hmm.
and it's very healthy to just ask. So I'm hearing you say, and you may reword it a
Mm,
little bit, so you don't sound like just a parrot, because otherwise
yeah,
that gets a little bit annoying.
yeah.
Um, but being able to say, so am I hearing you say that um, when that people sometimes will, I'm just going to go off what you said, that sometimes people will try to oversimplify what they say and not really get their message across.
Got you. And so it's almost like rephrasing it and summarizing what they say so that that way they're more understood. Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
yes. And
Hmm.
this way you have more clarity, um, because that could have been taken a bunch of different ways. Like
Yeah.
people dumb down their language. So, you know, I could have rephrased it and said, well, so what I'm hearing you say is that people just dumb down their language.
Yeah.
Um, um, and it doesn't really, it didn't get me any further clarity about
Yeah.
what I was wondering.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
And that makes a lot of sense. And um, someone a big entrepreneur taught me this is when you at the end of a meeting you kind of like summarize like everything that you talked about, and he would go on meetings where he would summarize like the conversation that they had and the action items, and they were like on two completely different spectrums, like whereas like it was like they were talking in a whole different ballpark almost. And it's like sometimes really
mhm.
valuable to restate those things, because sometimes like it could be taken just a completely different way that you did not intend at all. Yeah.
Yes, and another thing that works really well is um, basically tell me more, tell me more. So just
Yeah.
can you tell me more about that? Tell me
Hmm.
more about that, and it just keeps drawing out the person's thoughts. Um, so that's another technique that is helpful.
Yeah, and always having the context of that other person is so valuable, because it just really increases the communication when you like understand the context. And another thing that I want to touch on is the when it comes down to communicating with relationships. What I find it in my personal life is it's very easy to communicate for me as a guy to communicate with another guy, very direct. Like I don't have to really um, filter a lot what I say. Like I would say like, "Oh, you kind of sucked at doing that thing." And when I communicate to a guy, it's like, "Okay, cool, thanks, let's fix it," type of thing. But when I communicate with a girl, I have to be very careful, because I might touch a nerve. I am more likely to touch a nerve, at least with the girls that I'm around. that um, I more likely offend them. So they might like I might say like, "Oh, you work really hard in this," and they might just like take that in a completely different way, in a whole negative, and it like might be a horrible thing. I'm like, "Wow, like I can't believe like you took that in that way." It was like insane. Usually when I communicate with girls, I have to be very careful and cognizant of all the different perspectives. Where when I usually communicate with guys, I usually don't have to do that. I love to hear from you. Like, is that a normal perspective to have? Is that just the people I'm around? Like, I love to hear from you.
Again, everyone's different.
Yeah.
So it's going to vary. However, if you feel like you're walking on eggshells when you're talking to women, um, then
Sure.
have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
You know, what are your boundaries? You know, what is it that I say? You know, what words offend you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what words do you not want to hear? What words, um, you know, and just have that conversation about their boundaries with what
Mm-hmm.
you say. Um, and sometimes I think it's also tone of voice.
Yeah.
So, talking to a guy could be just much more, hey,
Yeah.
and your tone of voice can be more gruff.
Yeah.
And, perhaps with the females in your life, they need uh,
Softer.
it's necessary. Yeah. So it's not always what is said, it's the tone of voice that is being used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also talk about like filters. Like we all have like these natural filters. Like for example, if I give you this piece of art, let's just say this is a piece of let me see.
Yeah.
Let's see what
That's
I have
okay.
here.
That's okay.
Let me say, okay, I have a piece of art right here. Let's say hey, Allison, I was really hard on this piece of art. Let me know what your thoughts are. And then if it sucks, you're gonna say, Victor, that's great. And then you're not really gonna like you're gonna like have that natural filter of like saying that's great even though you don't think so. But if I say, hey, I know I suck at art right now, I'm working on my skills, let me know what your thought, then you're going to actually give your natural thought. So I like broke down that natural filter that you have. And one of these filters that I've learned is you can actually have a conversation about the conversation, meaning that when you're talking to a girl,
Hmm.
you can say, hey, I need to have a really hard conversation with you right now, but I think you're going to get angry. I don't know how to approach it, and I don't know what to do. And then when you start that conversation, it's going to be a million times better because they're going to come into it saying, "Okay, he's trying not to hurt me. He's trying, he has good intentions with this conversation." And it ends up being so much better when you have a conversation about the conversation beforehand, because then they have
Yes.
context about your thoughts.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just saying, I'm not sure what words I'm going to use or how I'm going to use them. So it may come out wrong. Feel free to ask me questions along the way, and I'll do my best to express myself clearly.
Yeah. And
Um,
especially like it really helps on these really hard conversations even more. Saying like, "Hey, I know I'm going to like I don't know how to phrase this. I'm going to say something stupid. You're going to get angry at me. Like this is a really hard conversation and I just don't know what to do. And I know I need to have it." And then now they know like you're not saying that you're free to say stupid things, but when you do say it, now they have context of like, oh, like he's trying to phrase it, he's trying to do it in a nice way, but he just can't
yeah.
phrase it correctly, type of thing. So
Yeah.
it just makes it where the conversation's a lot better, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
and it doesn't mean that you're going to say something stupid, um, and by you know
On purpose.
deprecating yourself like that.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily healthy either, because
Hmm.
then it's like, well, this person isn't very confident about speaking.
Yeah.
Where if it's just you know I'm just not sure what words I'm going to use to say
Hmm.
this, to say what I'm going to say. And please feel free to ask me any questions along the way. Um, and this way you're not self-deprecating and
Yeah.
um, making it sound like I don't know how to talk and have a
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's nothing wrong. We have different conversations. We have conflict. Um,
Hmm.
we have disagreements. It happens.
Yeah.
Um,
And like it's really valuable to like I learned how to articulate my thoughts through Toastmasters, which is like a public speaking
mhm,
like thing. And my brain is like a billion bouncy balls. Like like that's how my brain is. And I had to
mhm.
eventually learn how to slow down my thoughts enough to be able to communicate my words and be able to articulate my thoughts and think through them. So that is that when it comes to conversation, that might help other people when it comes to having these hard conversations as well, to really like thinking through it and thinking like how it's going to go, like not saying that you have to ruminate and like think about it like 24/7, but at least like articulate your thoughts, figure out like where you are inside your head, because the brain has millions of thoughts every single, probably like,
Oh,
yeah, I'll say
yeah.
millions. I'll say millions per day, and it's really hard to articulate all of them, categorize them, and even understand them. So that'll be valuable for people out there that are having those hard conversations to articulate your thoughts a little bit as well.
And slowing down is always a great idea.
Yeah.
Just and sometimes, especially if it's a difficult topic like you're talking about, my speech will slow down even more.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I know like my husband's more like you, where he's like, get to the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just get to the point already. What are you trying to say?
Yeah.
So I sometimes have to learn to do the opposite and, you
Uh-huh.
know, get all my thoughts together and then boom, you know, get them all out. Because otherwise he's like, oh my gosh, you're going on and on
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
on.
It's true. And when it comes down to conversation, you can really see based off someone's facial expressions. Like I do this a lot at conferences. Like I look at their body language. That tells you a lot about the person. Like if they're looking away constantly, like the at a conference, that means they're trying to get away. They're not interested in
Yes.
what you're saying. And it's like it you have to have some level of comfort in yourself to, because you're going to see things that they're going to be communicating, hey, I don't want to talk to you anymore type of thing, and it's going to be kind of painful to understand that type
Yes.
of communication. They're even like when I go up to a girl, like where their body language is, ew, gross, like I don't want to associate with
And
you,
they
and like it hurts, it still
they'll
hurts.
turn away or,
Yeah,
if
exactly. They'll
if
change
they're
their body.
leaning
And
in
yeah, and
or,
it's fine. Like
um,
it's okay if they reject you, but like it's important to recognize that body language, because guys are really bad at recognizing girls' body language is what I've seen, because they'll just keep talking to them, and like even though they definitely are like giving the signal like they're not
yeah.
interested, they're still
And
pursuing. It's like, bro, like he
they
doesn't
keep
want to
kind of,
talk to you. Like I don't know
they
what
keep
you want me
doing,
to say.
they keep doing this and,
Yeah,
turning sideways
yeah,
and,
yeah.
but, if they're leaning in,
Hmm.
if tipping of the head is a sign that someone's interested.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, just even sometimes, you know, a hand on the chin.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really interested.
Yeah.
So yeah, communication is also about body language.
Yeah.
Um,
And I would say that like the number one things that I see when a girl is interested and wants me to talk to her is like I see the eye contact. and my brain's been really good about saying, oh, this girl's interested, and like she'll make eye contact with me, and it's like that constant back and forth, usually longer than about like a second or two. I'm like, oh, this girl probably wants me to talk to her, and I'll go up and talk to her, and I instantly know, it's like, oh yeah, I was right. I usually go and test those theories, and say like, oh, this girl made eye contact, she probably wants me to talk to her. Sometimes I'm wrong, like 5% of the time I'm wrong, but most of the time I can say like, okay, this girl wants to talk, for me to talk to her or dance with her or whatever. And I'm gonna go and do that. And luckily, I country dance, so I really know body language like really really well.
Yeah.
I could see like oh, she's enjoying this, oh she's not. Um, and it really helps me understand like body language even to a more in depth. Um, and it's really interesting. It really is. I really
I
enjoy
think
it.
so. I think so. There's a bunch of great books. I know I have some, but I don't know that I could pull them really quickly on body language because it is something that is, you know, so easy to read. Or
Yeah.
I guess not always easy to read, but important to be able to read.
Yeah. Like I would say the number one tip for guys to for a the number one tip for guys to see if a girl's interested in you is, first of all, look at the eye contact. See if it lasts longer than a second or two is usually what I look for. So it's a normal human thing to, when a girl looks at you, like to look away instantly. So like if it's longer than a second or two, that means she's analyzing you in some way. Most of the time
Mhm.
is what I see. And the next thing is open body language, meaning that she's turning her body toward you. And the third thing I
Yeah.
look for is if her posture gets better. If her posture automatically gets better, that means I'm saying, oh, she's trying to impress me in some way. And those are usually the things I look for when I'm trying to pursue a girl or seeing if she's interested in me, essentially.
Yeah. You know, and like crossed
Yeah,
arms is definitely sometimes really um, that's a I'm closed. I'm closed off.
yeah.
They may be cold.
Mhm. And like that's a good point. Like I should go through the like some tips that if a girl's not interested in you, like usually the girls that have crossed arms, they usually don't want people to go up and talk to them, for example,
Mhm.
or they're in some type of place that they're not comfortable with. Sometimes you can go up to a girl and like basically make her more comfortable where she does have loose arms. But if the girl's constantly looking away, looking around, looking at her phone, she's obviously not interested, and she's communicating that, hey, I'm not interested in talking to you, and it's most likely you want to go to another girl. But guys are historically horrible at looking at these like subliminal like messages of girls
Yes.
saying it, so that's why I'm communicating this, because guys are awful at this, about seeing these signals, because this is how a lot of girls communicate. So it's really important to look at those and make sure that, hey, this girl's not interested in me, cool, let me go find one that is, type of thing.
And it's always true that girls are great readers of body language. It's not
Yeah.
like every girl has got it. Um, they may have their eyes set on a guy and be very forceful, whether
Hmm.
the guy might be doing the same things that you were talking about,
Yeah.
and they just don't pick up on it. So
That
it's
that
not
that
it's
yeah,
it's not just it's not just a guy thing. It can be
that's true.
a girl thing too.
I want to communicate this because this is so funny. Um, I want to communicate this to all the girls in the world. Is guys are horrible at subliminal messages. Like girls will like do all these messages to guys. They'll make eye contact with them. They'll do all these things to say like, "Hey, I like you," and they'll give all these like body language signals and things like that. But you have to realize guys are idiots. Like we don't like, I am just like a little bit ahead of the curve where I'm able to see those messages, but most guys are so like blind that they cannot read those messages at all. Like even if you go up to a guy and say, "Hey, I like you," they're gonna be like, "Wait, what?" Like, they're still gonna have no idea what's going on. So it's
Yeah.
really important, if you do like a guy, that you go up and like communicate that to him, because most of them are gonna be, idiots when it comes to subliminal body language, and
Yeah,
they're not going
that
to know what's going on. So you have to communicate. Don't think that the guy is reading you or anything else like that. Sometimes you just have to go up to the guy and talk to him, and that's the best way to approach it, because guys are really blind when it comes down to them,
well,
things
and
like that.
I think that's a great thing too, is
Mhm.
just starting a conversation. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, it's like, yeah, somebody, you may be drawn to somebody, find them attractive, um, but you may end up not liking them at all. It's just, there's something about them that
Hmm.
you found attractive at that moment. And then they start talking and you start having a conversation back and forth. And it's like, you know, the person
Yeah.
becomes a lot less attractive. Um,
True.
and, there are people who are just attractive, not like really stunning or anything like that. And you go up and have a conversation with them, and all of a sudden they just become more, even physically in your eyes, more beautiful, because it really comes from within. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, there's that initial attraction, you
Yeah.
know, and that chemical response between two people, and but starting the conversation,
Yeah.
I think is a
And
great
what?
way to,
Sorry.
rather than hey,
Yeah.
rather than just hey, I like you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how do you know if you? I mean, that would be the first thing that would go through my mind. Well, how do you know if you like me? You just walked up to me.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. And what's really interesting about that, if a guy, when you go up and talk to it, so let's say if you know a girl likes you and you go up and talk to her, there's two pieces of every conversation. There's the initial hey, which is the hardest part, like going up to the girl and saying hey. It's not easy for a guy. I've done it at least 1,000 times at this point, but it's still very hard in order to go up to a girl and talk to her. But there's the initial hey, and then there's like the how are you, which is the second part, which is the conversation part. And you can instantly know in the first about 30 seconds if the girl is going to like you or not. She's going to have a more open body language. She's going to be using her hands more. She's going to be drawn in, kind of like doing like
Hmm.
more things that
Yeah,
she's interested in you. And within the first 30 seconds, if she's actually like asking you questions and having a two-way conversation, then you can keep carry on the conversation. But if it's more like one word responses, no, yes,
yes,
like
yeah,
and not really caring about anything about you, then you can stop the conversation 30 seconds in, and that's totally fine. It's like, hey, it was great to meet you. I'm going to go grab a drink of water, and that's it. Like, that's really all that matters. It's not this huge
and
deal that you have to have.
it may be coming up with different questions that you
Yeah,
start with,
true.
where they're not yes or no questions.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And
so there's a
yeah,
lot of questions that you can just somebody could answer yes or no, and but if there's a question that they they're kind of like, oh, I have to answer this, um,
hmm,
then there's no wiggle room. And what about just walking up to somebody and you know, I mean, putting out your hand, shake their hand. Hi, my name is Victor. How are you?
yeah.
And you know, you'll start to see them, but this way they
Hmm.
know your name, that you're forthcoming, and um, can ask them their name, and then you know, think of some questions that are open-ended rather than just yes or no.
Yeah. And is there any other tips that you have for guys or girls when it comes down to starting that initial relationship that you would have, that you either see guys that are doing wrong or anything else that they could work on potentially?
I think that in the very beginning, most, the very beginning of a relationship, everybody is putting on
A mask.
their, their best. Yes, they're not showing your hand of who they are.
Yeah.
And I think having conversations early so that you really know, um, it's a lot of value structure. Do we value the same things?
Hmm.
And getting to understand, well, say the relationship goes on 6 months, it starts to get serious, um, and the woman wants to have children, and all of a sudden the guy says, "Oh, I never want to have kids."
Mm.
Um, and that's just one little aspect.
Yeah.
So, kind of having those conversations early on. It may seem premature, but it's so easy to be pie in the sky. Oh my gosh, look at, because you're so wrapped up in all of that chemical romance, um,
Yeah.
that we forget that there's actually a relationship here, and the it changes over time. Um,
Yeah.
so work ethic, family, you know, I know I have a course, and it's for couples who are deciding to commit to one another. And it's a 16-week course, and we go through every little detail from finances to family to,
Mm.
um, you name it. And, it's easier to walk away before it's easier to walk away with good feelings, knowing that this just wasn't going to work, than ending up being bitter and resentful going through a divorce later.
Yeah. I totally agree. And then like it's really important, like I usually have those conversations at the very beginning, like usually conversation 2 or 3 with a girl, and by saying like, hey, what are your non-negotiables, like what are some things that you would like not date a guy on, and like, oh, does he have to be religious, does he have to have kids or anything else like that, and go through those and have a conversation. And if those non-negotiables don't fit in your in your person of who you are, then
Hmm.
that's it. There's nothing else. If that's who you are as a person, and you can't change that, and you don't want to change that, then you can pursue someone else. And so you can know that like on conversation 2 or 3, rather than 6 months down the line, which is going to be valuable.
Right, right. And then there are things that are you can compromise about. It's like, yeah, we may agree to disagree on this, but we can compromise. Um, and it depends on the situation and what it is.
Hmm.
Um, it's like I'd like to go out with my buddies once a week. Um, well, some there are some women who may be like, I don't like that idea, but I can compromise with that because I trust you and I know everything's fine, and you're home by a certain time, and you're not neglecting me or anything like that. So there's compromise that can be done as well.
Yeah. And what I've realized recently is when someone loves you, they have to love every piece of you, like all your strengths, all your weaknesses. And when we first start a conversation and start that dating process, we're putting on that mask of our best selves, so that people end up falling in love with our best selves. And when we start showing this like vulnerable weakness weaknesses side of you, they have to be comfortable with that and they have to eventually love that. But in order for someone to love your weaknesses, they have to love their own weaknesses first. They have to be comfortable with those deep parts of them as well and love themselves for those weak parts in order for them to love your weak parts. And that's a really hard process. And sometimes it takes a lifetime for some people to get to that point. But in order for someone to love your weaknesses, they have to first love themselves and all their weaknesses too, which can be really hard to find in someone. And it's really hard. It's like, I'm not saying that's an easy thing, but they have to be somewhat comfortable in their own skin in order to really have a long lasting loving relationship there, in order to be really successful there. What are your thoughts on that?
And well, what I I agree because everybody, no one is perfect.
Yeah.
No one is perfect. Um, and as far as weaknesses go, if there is something that you really want to change about yourself, it is possible. And you know, you know, changing a habit or changing a thought pattern or changing, or acquiring a skill, practicing a skill so that you become better at it. So it can change if you really want that. So, and that's often a place where coaching is very helpful. Um, so you don't have to necessarily use, well, I'm just bad at,
Yeah.
and have it be an excuse.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is not one of my strengths, but I'd like to improve upon, you know,
Mhm.
whatever it might be, just a little bit here and a little bit there. So, it depends. As long as the other person, but the other person can't make you want it. You have to want it.
Yeah. And you mentioned that a lot of people, you mentioned you had that course that talks about every single piece that people could agree or disagree on in a relationship. And I'd love to hear from you. What are the top three things that you see people disagree with? Is it religion? Is it money? Is it like like going out? Like, I love to hear from you. What is the top three things that you see that as a big disagreement in 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 a family or relationship?
Um, Money, for
Mhm.
sure. Family, and how
Like having
often,
kids.
whether it's having kids or extended family, how much time with extended family, how much time can one tolerate with extended family. And then the third, um,
Yeah, and I know it's a
the
loaded
third,
question too.
no,
There's a
no, it's
lot.
okay. But the third is communication breakdown.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of pieces of ways to communicate, and like that. Like, for example, this is like a very odd thing that I found is usually when I dance with someone, I can read their facial expressions and like seeing if they're very happy and engaged and things like that. And there are certain scenarios where I'll dance with a girl and her face will be like this. I'll be like very like serious and whatever. And that tells me she's not having fun. I was like, it's totally fine. I'm totally like, that's totally fine if a girl doesn't have fun dancing with me. So I like walk away and then like they'll grab my arm and say like, hey, do you want to dance again? And I was like, well, huh? Okay, so like it like just totally caught me off guard. So there's certain the reason why I'm saying that is because there's certain ways that people communicate and respond to their emotional stimuli. Usually, what I find is people that are stoners usually don't show facial expressions. So that it's usually like very like even though they're having a great time, it's usually going to be like very much like this type of scenario. So the reason why I say that is because when it comes down to communication, like it's helpful to have those the same communication type because for example if I was in a relationship with the stoner I would never know what they're feeling because it'd be like always like this and I would never know if they're happy sad or anything I would just like I would think they're always mad at me or something so like it really having the same type of communication is really important um in that style super important.
And there are some things called mirroring neurons where we often will mirror each other. Um,
Yeah,
if especially if we do like each other. Um,
true.
and I, I just see you have just such a vibrant smile and, like
Thank you.
it would be just like, yeah, I'd love to, I would love to talk to him. Look at it. Look at that.
Yeah,
So, um, so, but yeah, when somebody has a flat affect, it's very hard to know. And then they're like, well, why are you stopping dancing with me? Well, you just didn't seem interested. Um, or I didn't think you were, I guess I would say I didn't think you were interested.
yeah.
Um,
And the most important part for me to be in a relationship is the energy and vibe. So, for example, I have a ton of energy, like an insane amount of energy. And
mhm.
I would like a girl that has at least 50%, if not like more than 50% of my energy is usually what I look for. Because like for example, I could not like have a girl that would just be a bum and sit on the couch. I would rather jump off a cliff. That would that would not be fun for me. But like a girl that would say like, "Hey, let's go hiking. Hey, let's go do all these things," and to like match my level of energy is like one of the most important things to me as a person when it comes to finding a mate. Like all these other things are kind of optional, like intellectual, like religion, like all these other pieces. That's like an optional thing for me. But energy and vibe is like the most important thing to me when it comes to relationships, is what I
I
find.
enjoyed, I enjoyed that you said 50%
Yeah,
because like, okay, somebody who's like a couch potato and then there's you would not be
yeah,
happy.
yeah.
But
I know how
somebody who
crazy I
has,
am. Yeah,
but somebody who has as much energy as you wouldn't know what to do with each other. You'd be just like flapping your,
yeah,
you would overstimulate each other. And so somebody
yeah,
who's 50% is enough to match your energy when needed and enough to kind of
yeah.
cool bring things down when needed. Yeah.
Yes, not that I want to be brought down, but yes, like that, like
Yeah. Not,
because I also I'm self aware. I know how crazy I am. Like when it comes down, like I'm fully aware that I have way more energy than most of the population, and I don't have these unrealistic expectations when it comes to girls saying, "Oh, you gotta have as much energy. You gotta be going 10 out 14 hours a day. Let's go." Like I don't have that. It's like, hey, like I know she's gonna have her own whoever whatever relationship I get in. I know she's gonna have her own passions. She's gonna have her own things that that energizes her, and I'm totally down for that. And I have to love that piece of her. And it's just really important to me to have some level of energy to keep me going, because that's what I prioritize. Is
yeah.
like for example, if she wants to watch TV all day and do that with me, like I said, jump off like a cliff. A cliff sounds a lot more
Yeah.
interesting than watching TV all day for me.
Yeah.
So that's where like I really got to have that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I guess when I said bring you down, I didn't mean it. It was more balance you out.
Yes, yeah, I
So,
know. Yeah,
I misspoke, and
no,
the
yeah,
words
I
I
understood what you meant.
chose were, yeah, but I just wanted to clarify because I didn't mean it to sound like, bringing you down.
No,
But
no.
It was more when, at the end when you said balance, because I was actually going to
Yeah.
say that anyway. More balance you out.
Yeah.
Um, so,
I know what you meant. I know what you meant. And is there anything else that has been top of mind with you lately that you've been seeing in relationships that you've been wanting to communicate? Um, and or anything else you want to talk about there?
um, just mostly that people need to be around other people. And according to positive psychology, we actually need to be around people between 6 and 8 hours a day.
Wow.
And people are not there.
Yeah.
We do not, we're not interacting with people that often. Um, um, and it's just, it's sad, um,
Yeah.
because this interaction with other people is actually the strongest component for happiness and health
Yeah.
and longevity, um, well-being, um, and you know, I know, having gone through the pandemic, it was hard because people weren't able to be together, and you know, Zoom's become a wonderful thing because I felt strong connections with people through Zoom and other um, you know, media platforms such as this. But it's really important, and just
And
like to encourage people.
yeah.
Be,
And what I wanted to touch on is that social media also opens up that in a way too, because you almost feel like you're connecting with that person through social media. Like it's like an extension of the people you talk to. Like you know how we're the average of the 5 people that we talk to? Well,
Mhm.
social media is a big piece of that now. Like if you're watching these people and they're talking about how toxic everything is, how much the world sucks and everything else, that will influence your mind and who you are as a person. That will meet the top 5 people that are like having a big influence in your life. So if you want to, I always talk about if you want to change your mind, then it starts with changing that content that you consume because that will affect the 5 people that are going to influence you and the way your mind thinks. So it all starts with that is really important.
Yeah, and I think social media is a great thing. It's here. It's here to stay. Um, a lot of people post a lot of false information. Um, and I started thinking, when people are, sometimes I've heard, oh, I just feel bad when I look at social media because other people are just showing that good stuff.
Math. Hmm.
Um, and it's like, well, maybe they just really want to celebrate with you. So
Yeah.
celebrate them. Just a shift in perspective a little bit.
Hmm.
I don't need to feel bad about myself because of what something's good is happening for somebody else. Celebrate with them.
Yeah.
Congratulations. This is a wonderful thing for you. Um, so I've had a little bit of a mind shift with that. Um, but if it's too much, if it's somebody who you're following and it's all negative and negative and negative and negative, um, unfollow. you know,
Yeah. It's
no,
easy.
we don't need it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It makes it where it's a lot easier to change rather than your friends and things like that. It's a lot easier to change your followers and things like that. And before we continue, that's all we have time for today. Unfortunately, I know we can go on this for 7 more hours.
I know
But
it's so much fun.
Yeah. Allison, please tell them how to find you, how to find your business, and everything else like that.
Absolutely. So my website is www, and this is always a little
We got it.
long,
We have it on the
so
screen right here too.
oh great. Purposeful Pathways Life Coaching.com. So that is my website. My email is Allison Cowan. Look at you. Yeah. At purposefulpathwayslifecoaching.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, um, Instagram, Facebook, and it all ends Allison Cowan Coaching. So,
Awesome.
um,
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you everyone for watching. This is the Mind Workshop podcast. And thank you. Let's talk later. Thank you, everyone.
I love it. Thank you so much.